Good morning. Welcome to Wednesday morning's thought for today. Just take a moment at the start to remind you, if you're a member of Killinchy Presbyterian Church, we have our online Zoom prayer meeting tonight at 7:30. And as always, the prayer link will probably go up in the chat later on. But I just want to remind you, you're always very welcome. And I think we had a couple of new faces last week and people are coming back, and it's great to see other faces at the prayer meeting. You don't have to come and say anything. You just be part of that meeting and hear the topics, and you can pray quietly, or you can give us the topics that maybe you need prayer for, and we would love to pray for you as well. So that's happening tonight at 7:30 on Zoom, and you'd be very welcome to come to that. Okay, this morning we're continuing to look at this character Thomas, this doubting Thomas, as so often he's referred to. Thomas, Aramaic, Didymus would have been the Greek version of it. So there's this sense of Thomas was known as the twin. He was called different names by different people. And so often when people talk about somebody who doesn't believe or who doubts, they said, "Oh, you're just a doubting Thomas." And that's a phrase that has stuck to him. And I'm not sure that's necessarily the correct way to look at Thomas. We're judging him very quickly at being somebody who doubted, somebody who just didn't accept what he heard, and somebody who didn't believe, etc., etc. And in some ways we use him to cover ourselves in a sense. Well, if Thomas doubted, then so can I. But I'm not so sure that Thomas really doubted. I think there were a lot of things going on with Thomas that we don't understand. We never will understand in this life. And so we've been thinking through that this week. Yesterday we thought about how Thomas reacted, what he said, how he, in a sense, blew up and basically said, "Look, I'm not even going to believe what my eyes see. I'm going to have to put my finger into the nail marks in his hands and put my hand into the hole in his side where that spear was driven for me to be able to believe that's what it's going to take." And that's incredible when you think about it. If he had been there the night Jesus first appeared to him, he would have believed. He would have seen and believed. But because he was not excluded, because he maybe excluded himself from that, but because he was not part of what happened, he found it very difficult to believe. Or he had this awful jealousy because they got to see Jesus and he didn't. Or he had this fear of missing out. And so Thomas's greatest need was for Jesus to, in a sense, repeat what he did the first time, for Jesus to reveal himself to Thomas in the same way as he revealed himself to the other disciples. That's all well and good. That's what Thomas needed. Now, very often we think we know what we need. We think we know, if God would only do this, if God would only answer this prayer, then I would believe. If God would show himself to me in some way, if God would do a miracle in some way, well, then I would believe. And other times when we're praying for something very serious has happened in our lives, and we pray about it. And we almost expect when we open our eyes that whatever that problem was, it would have gone, or God would have sorted it, or it would have been dealt with. And very often, those of us who are Christians and have been Christians for a while, we know that when we pray about something, when we open our eyes, that thing most likely will still be there, because we do not command God to do what we want him to do when we want him to do it. God does things in his own time, and his own time is perfect time. Not because he says so, not because we say so, but because with God, he acts when it is the right time to do anything. God has never come to human's aid too early or too late. He's always been there at the right time. Jesus himself showed that by hanging back and not going immediately to Lazarus' house when Lazarus was ill, that he was able to get more glory for God by coming when Lazarus had died. Even though that time was horrendous for the sisters, they probably thought Jesus should have come immediately, that he should have got the first transport that would have got him there fast, and should have been there to heal Lazarus. But instead, Jesus wasted a few days before he came, and that must have been hard for Jesus as well as for them. And yet, when he came to Mary and Martha, they realized that those days weren't wasted, because in those days their faith was tested and strengthened and sustained, and Jesus answered their prayer in a far greater way. So Jesus doesn't always come when we think he should come, or answers when we think he should answer us. He does it when the time is right for him, and usually it's for our good and for our best. And so after we read this passage, we read verse 25 yesterday, after we read what Thomas has said about his need to be able to put his hand in Jesus' side and his finger in the nail holes in Jesus' hand, then you think, well, the best thing that could happen here would be for Jesus to show himself to Thomas and get this sorted out. That's not what happens. The next verse 26, starts with 8 days later. Okay, not the next day or the day after, or the day after that or the day after that. Not even a week later, but 8 days later. We read, his disciples were inside again, and Thomas was with them. Although the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them. Now, we don't know why Jesus delayed. Jesus maybe could have appeared to Thomas by himself. Maybe. But maybe there was a bigger point to be made. Maybe Jesus needed Thomas to be with the disciples again before he was prepared to come and show himself again. And maybe Thomas, for whatever reason, the disciples were together, but Thomas wasn't part of them again. We don't know. But for whatever reason, 8 days elapsed between when Thomas says this and when Jesus shows himself to Thomas and the other disciples. We don't know why. And we don't know why in this life sometimes God seems to tarry. God seems to take his time. God sometimes answers our prayers way, way after we've prayed them. Sometimes we even forget we've prayed them until we suddenly realize, hang on, that's the answer to the prayer I prayed so long ago. And so I want to encourage you today that if you've been praying, if you've been asking, if you've been trusting in God for something, and for some reason God hasn't answered that prayer yet, or you haven't understood his answer yet, don't be impatient. Trust that he will act when the time is right. He waited 8 days for Thomas here. There are incidents in the Bible where Jesus didn't arrive for 400 years after the last prophet spoke, and that was an incredible time. God will act when the time is right, when it's right for you and when it's right for him. So I want to encourage you this morning to be patient with the Lord. Be patient with the Lord. Continue to talk to him about what you need and what you want, and continue to trust him that he will be there for you. And who knows, maybe even today could be that day when the Lord answers that prayer, when the Lord comes to you. I hope you have a great Wednesday, and I hope you know the nearness of the Lord this day. I'll see you tomorrow. God bless.